2nd, 2006. We're interviewing Nelson Bernabucci at the Blackstone Library in Brantford, Connecticut. My name is Matt Roth. I'll be doing the interview today. And Nelson, maybe we could start by, you could give us a little bit of a background on yourself, maybe the branch of service you're in, and how many years you're in the service. And
Fine. I entered the service on 22 June 1943. That was about 2 weeks after high school graduation. I was given an opportunity to join the Navy, so we did recruit training in Virginia, and after Virginia we traveled to Rhode Island. We traveled for further training in Mississippi, and headed to Port Hueneme, California, and that's where we shipped out in February of '44. We shipped and landed first in Finch Haven, New Guinea. That was controlled by the American troops. There were a lot of Australian troops there, and of course the natives of the island. And that's where we became acclimated to the weather, and that's where we started to take malaria tablets and lived in pup tents in the mud due to the rain that came on the islands. From Finch Haven, our big move was to Hollandia, and I believe it was the first time, as I read, that General MacArthur bypassed the whole Japanese base and went from Finch Haven, bypassing an island, and into Hollandia, New Guinea. My outfit was the construction battalion. We went in and what was then a complete jungle transformed into a beautiful naval base. One of the things I shall remember the first day is that when we landed, and I was a yeoman. A yeoman was a person who worked in an office. We walked around what was then the initial landing of Hollandia, and we saw a group of soldiers, and we went up to that group of soldiers, and we saw a gentleman that before I left for the service, the nation thought was a conscientious objector. Now, this generation does not even know the term conscientious objector, but that man was a very famous movie actor. His name was Lou Ayres. I think he won an award for All Quiet on the Western Front. And his idea was he did not want to kill. He did not want to enter the service because that was against his philosophy. Well, lo and behold, going back to this group of soldiers on the island of New Guinea, the first day we landed in Hollandia, who was in that group but Lou Ayres himself? He had entered the army not necessarily as a fighting soldier, but he became a minister's assistant. And he was administering to 4 Japanese prisoners at the time. I clearly remember the prisoners asking him for rice, for food, and he had said, "We have no rice, but we have bread and butter." And as I mention that today to today's generation, they know not of Lou Ayres, nor do they know of what a conscientious objector was. But that was the first episode that I remember, the first day landing. And I also remember, as a yeoman, our duty was fine. We didn't get much involved until midnight, when it came to the midnight to 4 a.m. watch. And the chief pointed his flashlight to a hole and said, "This is your guard duty hole. You watch that tank." And at 18 years old, I had my finger on that carbine rifle from 12 midnight to 4 o'clock in the morning when I was relieved. That's just the beginning of New Guinea. I can go on. After we established the base, and of course while we were at the base, we were privileged to be entertained by the likes of Bob Hope and his troop. And I have pictures here of Bob Hope as he entertained the Navy fleet. There were about 18,000 sailors and soldiers who had attended 2 of his performances. And Patty Thomas was the dancer, and Francis Langford was the singer, and Jerry Colonna, I don't know how I remember these names, was Bob Hope's sidekick comedian. It was a fantastic show. Then after we established the base at Hollandia, before the battalion moved up to Mindoro Island in the Philippines, a group of 50 men proceeded to get things ready for the battalion, but they never made it. Another term that I will mention will be kamikaze pilot. Today's generation does not know what a kamikaze pilot was, and that was a Japanese pilot who, when he got on his airplane, he knew that his objective was to crash into any ship that was in the ocean. He was going to devote his life, give his life, and that's what happened to 50 men who proceeded the battalion going to the Philippines. And we lost not all of the 50, but we lost a number. And these were young boys. I mean, come on. These were 18, 19 years old. One of my friends was 18, 19, and he received the Silver Cross because although he was a mechanic, he jumped on that machine gun, and as these planes that were flying so low came by, he actually shot one down. And he got the Silver Cross. And Mindoro, we were there about 4 or 5 months. When the war in Europe ended, I was in Hollandia, New Guinea. When Japan surrendered, I was in Mindoro Island in the Philippines. And on the night that we got the news that Japan had surrendered, there was a play on stage. Some group had come to perform, and the performance was halted by the commander coming aboard stage saying, "I'm sorry I have to interrupt the show, but I have good news, Japan has surrendered." And of course, you can imagine the thrill. Unbelievable.
What was it like then? What did people do?
Of course, they passed out free beer. Everybody celebrated. And that was, I think, in August, if I remember my dates, but I didn't get back to the States until December 1. Because I was a yeoman, now the war had ended, and they needed yeomen to come back to the discharge centers to help type out the discharge papers. So I did come home, 11 of us, flew from Manila to Guam, to Guazon, to Johnson, to Pearl Harbor. And I had a physical exam. And the doctor looks at me and he said, I'm going to use the expression, "Who the hell ever let you into the United States Navy?" He said, "You were not big enough to confront an enemy." I shall never remember those terms either, but I felt so great having been through. I'll go back again. When I was in boot camp, I was called at the sick bay, which is the hospital of the Navy. And the doctor looks at me and says, "Young man," he says, "you have a curvature of the spine." I said, "I'm aware of that." He says, "Well, you got 2 choices. Number 1, you go back to your outfit. Number 2, you can be medically discharged." I said, "I want to go back to my outfit." It's the best thing I ever did. I mean, what an experience to have been through World War II, to have been part of it, to have seen and gained so much experience. I was a yeoman, a typist. After discharge, I took advantage of the GI Bill. I got my ASBS, MS Master's 6th-year diploma. I met my wife, who was a teacher. When I met her, I was not a teaching. I got back into teaching. I was a business teacher in the Hamden school system for 22 years, and I got credit for my Navy three years of service. I continued to do in the Navy as a civilian. When I started to teach, I developed a tutoring service, Branford Hall, and Branford Hall developed into what is now the Branford Hall School of Business, which is centrally located here in Brantford. It has a corporate headquarters in Brantford. I sold Branford Hall in 1993. It has now grown into a multi-million-dollar corporation. There are 7 Branford Halls. There are 3 in Connecticut. There are several in New York State and Massachusetts. And that all started right here in Brantford with the good old ASDF JKL semicolon.
That's great.
So, fantastic, really fantastic. And I would encourage any young man who is entering the service, I'm going to plug the Navy. I mean, the Navy will treat you greatly. You're clean. The food, we used to have Army officers in New Guinea stand in our chow line on a Sunday because our food was so great in comparison to what and what the other services got. It was great. We even had an ice cream machine in New Guinea, if you can picture that. I mean, the Navy went all out to try to.
Why was the Navy?
I don't know. Maybe because the ships. They had the ships to bring the food. I'm sure they brought the food to the other services as well, but the Navy always did extremely well. But I will level with you. I have not had a slice of Spam since May of 1946. That I don't miss.
You mentioned the announcement that the Japanese had surrendered. Could you expand a little bit more? Did that come as a total surprise?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, those who we were in attendance, we had no knowledge that the surrender had come through. It was just that our commander came aboard stage and said, "I have an announcement to make. Japan has surrendered."
What was it like right before that announcement? Were people in generally a high point, or was it a low point?
Well, it was getting close to the end of the war, you know. But when you're overseas, anything can happen. I mean, when we first landed in New Guinea, we had, we'll call him Charlie, this Japanese pilot would come over at 5:30 in the morning and 10:30 at night, just before you went to bed at night, just before you got up in the morning, and he'd just be a nuisance. So there's always a threat of something coming around. The PT boat stations were built for the Navy in New Guinea. The destroyers were able to come in and refuel and get water and replenish their stock. Now, the average age of the Seabee was about 35 years old. That meant that they were basically skilled craftsmen. They were carpenters, plumbers, electricians, tractor operators, you name it. I was 18. The only skill I took with me was typing because I just got out of high school. So I used that typing to good avail. I became a second-class yeoman when I was discharged, starting from a seaman first, seaman, yeoman third, and then after, let me go back a bit. I got my discharge. I came home. I had 30 days left to serve because I figured I was going to work in a discharge center. And I said to the officers at the station, what discharge station are you going to assign me to? They said, we're not going to assign you to a discharge center. We're going to send you to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. I said, but I only have 30 days to serve. They said, we only need you for 30 days aboard an ATM. It was a tugboat cruiser. You know, we were towing targets for destroyers who, after the war, were still having targets. So I spent a month in Guantanamo Bay, cruising up and down Cape Hatteras. That was another joyful experience. When I got off the ship to be discharged, the captain said, Nelson, he said, if you re-enlist, I'll make you yeoman first class. And I said, thank you, but no thank you. And that was my term. It was great.
Do you feel your experience in the service prepared you? How did that parlay into your route in business?
The experience in the service would help any young man and or young lady. And I'll tell you, we had a commander overseas that when he walked in our office, everybody froze with fright. I mean, nothing was good enough for him. His chief yeoman was basically made insane. He ended up dissecting the swamp area because he couldn't take it anymore. And I said, dear Lord, if I ever come out of this, I'll never subject myself to any type of pressure from any other human being as I've experienced here in the service. In this Quonset hut in New Guinea, I mean, he put the pressure on everybody. And that was a tremendous experience for me because there will always be tight situations, but you just got to learn to be calm. You're going to make any mistakes, but you'll learn to correct them. I've been blessed. I mean, come on. I had nothing. I wouldn't have been a teacher unless I met my wife who got me started. She was a teacher. I became a teacher. And as it dwelled, because I typed in the service, I figured, well, you know, I'll tutor, but I'll give private typing lessons. Nobody ever gave private typing. So it may not work, but it'll work. It worked. And now, as I say, Branford Hall has 7 schools that I know of, and they're forever expanding. They still have the basic paralegal program that I developed, the medical assisting program that I developed, and of course the computer program they've expanded on. They've since added several other programs. So it's been a labor of love, and that has been my utopia. Branford Hall has been my utopia.
That's great. What about, have you had any other family members, either children or relatives that have been in the service?
My brother was in the Marine Corps before I went in, and I have had to, of course he has since passed away, and when he came home on furlough, I said to him, gee, maybe by the time you come for your next furlough, I'll be in the Navy, I'll be in the service. He said, oh, he said, don't worry about it. He said, by the time I come home the next time, within a year, the war will be over. Well, the war wasn't over. Matter of fact, I went overseas before he did. The war was over, and the Marines sent him to China. So he never lived that down, because I was overseas when I was 18, 19, and came home when I was 20. But Dan was in the service. I have a son and a daughter, and neither of them have been into the service now.
Have you maintained contact with people you served with?
We get together every 4 or 5 years, but I'm sorry to say I've not attended any one of those meetings yet, and of maybe the 50 who started that reunion, maybe there's 25 or 30 left. And I say next time they come to they have reunions throughout the United States, Texas, California. I said if they ever come to the East Coast, not that I would remember anybody, but chances are I would make an effort to attend the next time. But they do have reunions, the 113th Seabees Battalion, yeah.
You started off here mentioning the construction on the islands there when you first got into service. Is there some other, can you expand a little bit on some other construction projects, or is that base, for example, still around, or some other?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I love to travel, but I wouldn't want to go back to New Guinea to see whether, in fact, they've modernized it. I have no interest in going there. Now, if they were in Italy or France, like a lot of my friends who served in Europe have gone back. I have one friend, the late Roy Tipping, who was a tank commander. He took his wife back exactly where he took his tank. He rented a limousine and followed that path. But I have no aspirations of going to New Guinea and tracing where I was stationed.
Do you remember where you were when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
I probably was a junior or a sophomore in high school. And right after that.
You're in school?
Yeah, yeah. And my brother immediately enrolled in the Marine Corps. We had one member of the family participate.
Yeah. Were you ever fearful?
You're always fearful. You're always fearful. But you get through it. You get through it. And as I say, I never was involved with hand-to-hand combat or anything like that. Some of our men, as I say, got involved by being subject to kamikaze. Some of the men were killed with sniper fire. But by and large, the Army usually preceded us. They went in and pretty much cleared up before we went in. On other occasions, the Seabees were not that lucky. They were in as part of the fighting force.
When you say the Seabees?
Yeah, construction battalion.
Got it, okay.
Yeah, as I say, they were all skilled craftsmen. That's why they selected that branch of service. I don't know how I ended up there, because I was not skilled in anything but typing.
What about the dropping of the atomic bombs? You remember where you were and what the reaction was?
Reaction was one of relief and sorrow, obviously, for the victims. But as I read, if the atomic bomb was not dropped, there were over 1 million men prepared to go and assault Japan, and I would have been among that, because I was right on the island of Mindoro, which was right underneath Japan. And if you read the writings, they knew the first several waves we're not going to make it. And I don't know how many waves they were anticipating before we made any progress, because Japan was well fortified, expecting a landing. So I'm grateful for the amount of lives that the United States saved. Very grateful. War is hell. Nobody likes war. I wish they would just outlaw war and settle things peacefully, if that can ever. But we said that at the end of World War II. This is the war that's going to end all wars. That's a lie. It hasn't been the case. Hopefully, I just hope the young men and women who are serving in Iraq get home. I don't believe in the young women being in the fighting force. I can see them working as clerks, as disbursement people. I don't believe them being on the front. I really don't.
Have you ever been down to the World War II monuments?
That's what I want to do. I have not, in answer to your question, not been there, no. I do want to go there because I'm a charter member, as a matter of fact. I contributed $100 when they were establishing this. And I'm also a charter member of the museum, which I have not been to either. But I'm well aware that they're there.
Yeah, looks like a beautiful monument.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat
Yeah.
ceremony.
You know what I learned the other day? I'm president-elect of the Branford Rotary Club. And I thought, what is it could I do? And I thought, I would love to be able to establish a monument on the green in Branford of all the names of those Branford people who served during World War II. Well, I don't know that that's going to be a possibility. But I did find out that those names are listed in the community house in Branford. Are you aware of that?
You know, I think I've seen, actually,
everybody goes in the side door, you know,
right.
And I think it's called World War II Memorial or whatever.
Right.
But I'm told that if you go in the front door, and I've yet to go there, and I've been here for 50 years, but I've got to make a trip within the next 10 days to see, in fact, that there is a listing of the World War II Branford veterans. Very interesting. See, you learn something new every day. Every day.
So you came back to, you lived in New Haven or Branford at that point?
I lived in New Haven, yeah. And as I say, I started to go to school. And then I met my wife and I moved to Branford. And she taught in Branford, I taught in Hamden.
Can you describe kind of you know, people my age too, you see all those things about the ticker tape parade in New York and other places like that. What was it like coming back here?
I was never part of those tickets. When the war in Europe was over, it was a big parade. I was not part of that. When Japan surrendered, there was a big parade. We were not part of that either. But it was great for those who were here and were able to enjoy it and partake. It was great. Just being home safe was just great. And the fact that through the GI Bill I was able to get this education. Otherwise, that would not have been possible.
And where'd you go to school?
University of Bridgeport and Quinnipiac. I started out, Quinnipiac was the junior college of commerce when I entered, 46, 47. And I'll never remember, I'll never forget enrolling there. I think I was discharged May 6, 1946. I think by June I was ready to enroll. And the dean at the time says, young man, he says, why don't you take a semester off and get reacclimated to civilian life? I said, I think I'm ready. So sure, I enrolled. And he was right. By about the second day, I'm back in New Guinea. I'm floating here and there, but it worked out perfect for me. It worked out perfect.
Yeah, that's got to be a dramatic transition.
Transition was perfect.
Okay, tell us about boot camp.
Oh, boot camp. Because of my size, they would either put me in front of the drill line, leading the pace, and they'd be stumbling behind me, or if they put me in the back, I'd probably be 10 or 15 paces behind them. But I never faltered. I never collapsed. Some of them did. I mean, the heat and all of that, and the needles that you get, I've never collapsed. You know, I've been healthy, thank God of that. But boot camp is mandated. You can't get anywhere unless you go through boot camp. And we went to one place I did return to We were stationed in Gulfport, Mississippi, and we did New Orleans for Liberty. And I was so naive at 18, I thought the French quarter was a foreign coin at that. Anyway, we did take a trip back to New Orleans, my wife and I. We went on the Mississippi, you know, the cruise, the paddle boat, and walking Canal Street, if you're familiar with was really a pleasure having a civilian suit on instead of having my Navy uniform on, because I spent many weekends in New Orleans. That brought back a lot of memories. California, I spent my first Christmas year, December of 1943, with a fellow. He took a young man in our unit. He lived in California. He took 4 of us to his home for Christmas, which was fantastic. But Christmas of 44 was overseas, and I'll tell you, the Navy food during the holidays, they never lacked anything. All the turkey and all the ham and all the fixings, they were there for us. It was really great. Yeah, did I miss home? Of course. At 18, 19, I didn't know any better, you know, but home was comfortable, and living in a pup tent wasn't too comfortable, but you learn to live with it. And then we lived in tents, as you can see there. But I'm so thankful that I was able to go and participate and be part of it. It'll be part of my life forever.
You mentioned living in the tents and the malaria. And that,
yeah.
Was that,
you take malaria pills so that obviously you don't get the disease, but as you take them, you turn yellow and yellow and yellow. All of us had that. But that was, again, to prevent that you get the disease of malaria during...
Did you lose guys to malaria?
Pardon?
Was the medicine effective, or did you guys...
Oh, yeah. There weren't, to my knowledge, there wasn't anybody who got infected because they were all under the pill. But that was something we took all the time. Yeah.
How did the native people react to all these?
They kind of stayed away, you know, in Finchhaven, when the Army had already been there, they had been accustomed to seeing the soldiers there, so they were closer. They would walk away with, if not walk away with, but we would give them hats and or clothing, and you'd see them walking down the roads, which weren't there before we got there. And in Hollandia, it took them a little longer because we were the first outfit in Hollandia, first Navy outfit in there. But they had their own, you know, their own cultivation. We didn't disturb them. I say that with reservation. We took over where they were living, but I'm saying we didn't. We were there to help them. We weren't there to displace them.
You mentioned you guys are going in and you're building these, basically, like you said, from scratch and
yeah.
a base.
Yeah.
That sounds like a huge logistical...
It was. And I guess all the bulldozers, all the heavy equipment, that all, it didn't come with us. We went over on a troop ship, and because we were a Navy battalion, and they took us to the tip of New Guinea. Then we all got to get off this troop ship. We came down these rope ladders onto landing barges that took us to a Liberty ship. And a Liberty ship took us into our first landing, which was Finchhaven, New Guinea. And it was a pleasure to see some U.S. airplanes flying above in that area as we were landing. And although there was an air raid alert as we landed, we felt at peace knowing that there were U.S. airplanes in the area. Yeah.
Were there ever any attacks or battles there at Finch Harbor?
Oh, yeah. There's an outfit here in Brantford that was very active in securing Finchhaven. There was a battery in Brantford that was in Finchhaven with the Army, and they're very well notarized as to their efforts in settling Finchhaven. Yeah. So we got there when it was settled. The Australian troops were there as well. But we were the first Navy battalion to land in Hollandia, and we perhaps one of the last to leave.
What other countries were contributing to the construction type of efforts? Or were you guys pretty much as a U.S.?
I'm not sure of what other countries were involved. I knew that we were heavily involved, but I didn't know. I don't know that any other country. They may have supplied us with raw material, but I'm not sure what countries did participate in that.
What was the biggest challenge for you personally? Like you mentioned that a lot of these guys were kind of a little older and they had some trades, and
yeah.
But just is there couple particular things that really stand out as you felt as a real
there was unity. I mean, that's what made it a success. Although they were all twice as old. I was 18, their average age was 35, but everybody was treated with respect. As far as that's concerned, you had good group leaders, you had good lieutenants in charge of companies, good chiefs in charge of companies, and they were on your side, which helped.
So you started the Brantford Hall.
Right.
And was that by yourself? Do you have some colleagues?
No way. That was strictly by myself. Yeah. No founders, no corporate sponsors, and it started in the base of my home.
Really?
Started in the base of my home.
So you're an entrepreneur before the word entrepreneur came around.
That's correct. And I can clearly remember, as I say, I would teach from 8 to 3. I actually had 2 full-time jobs. One was teaching in the Hamden system from 8 to 2, and one was growing Brantford Hall from 3 to 10. I would tutor from 3 to 5. I had an office in the old Century building in the Haven, a corner of Wall and, Church. And I'd run there and have a 10 by 10 office, and I'd have private students in typing. I'd run home, have dinner, and then go back and be there for a real estate class that ran from 7 to 10. So I know what it is to put in 15-hour days. And then it was basically a night school because I was teaching during the day. I taught a lady who was a UConn grad how to type. And I hired her to start my first day school typing program. And that's how I got started during the day. While I was starting, I started in the tool building, which is right down the street. And in my first year of first several years of running Brantford Hall, I gave free typing lessons to the Brantford Police Department, free typing lessons to the New Haven Police Department, free typing lessons to the Naval Reserve over at Morris Cove. And I worked with Joe Trapasso in establishing a free typing seminar for the special kids at the high school. They would come in on Saturday morning, and we would work one-on-one on the typewriters. So that was a great experience for me. And then and mind you, I'm still teaching, and I'm building the morning school up until it became nationally accredited. That meant that the students can get their financial aid, their student loans, or what have you. I had 22 years of service in the Hamden school system. I bought my Navy World War II time, so with 25 years of service, I could retire. We were in the tool building. We moved to the theater building, the second floor. We started with 1 or 2 rooms, and I think we ended up taking the whole top floor. And then there was some building coming up on Business Park Drive that I looked at and decided we would build there. And let me tell you, Brantford Hall was 20 years ahead, way back, 26 years ahead in 1980. Because not only did we have an accredited one-year secretarial school, we were the only preparatory school in the country that had an on-site child care center. So Susie, who was 19, had a child, would walk down the hall, deposit her child. We had a director of child care who is a former director of a local child care center here in Brantford, so she was skillful and set up all the work. It was very successful because when I was in the theater building recruiting students, there would be this 18, 19, 20-year-old young lady who would love to come to school, but there was no one to take care of their child. So I said, if I ever am able to build a school, in that school will be a child care center. And it was, and it worked very successful, very successful. Then when I sold it, the gentleman who bought it was not interested in having it. He was interested in, building a school. He moved from Business Park Drive to place on a hill, Summit Drive on the hill. He has a big building there, and they're very busy, very successful. Thank God. It's a dream come true. What can I tell you?
Yeah, that's great. Have a lot of veterans have used Brantford Hall, or do you know that veterans are enrolled?
It was veterans approved, and I think there was maybe one or two that I can remember in the paralegal program. Most of the proprietary school programs were geared for young ladies. It was basically secretarial. Then we implemented paralegal. And of course the real estate programs were for men and for ladies. But there weren't many veterans, but we were approved for veterans training if in fact it was their desire to take a paralegal course. And I think there were several there.
So you were drafted?
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
What was your reaction or your feeling?
I was ready. I mean, you know, I didn't know that they would take me, but hey, if they took me, I was happy to go. Yeah.
A lot of your friends drafted?
There were about 6 or 8 of us, and I think 6 went to the Army, and they went home and they told my mother, they said, now someone into the Navy, we went into the Army, you know, and they couldn't understand why I'd rather go to the Navy. It was a good selection.
Why did you select that?
Pardon?
Why did you select that, the Navy?
Yeah, I like the Navy over the Army. I've always liked the Navy. I would rather have been in the Navy than the Army. Just a personal choice, that's all. Nothing more. I have had no prior experience, obviously, you know.
Looking back, is there anything that you would have changed or you wish you would have done a little bit differently regarding the service?
No, not at all. No.
That's good. That's got to be satisfying.
It was a great experience, and I would recommend I have a daughter, I have a son. I don't like to see service mandated, but if a young lady or a young man can have 2 years of service away from home, on your own, building good skills, good character, it's the best training in the world, really. Hopefully not having to go to war, obviously. Yeah, it's great. It was great. And the educational opportunities that it afforded me, I don't know that they were available today as they were during World War II.
Yeah, the GI Bill.
GI Bill, yeah, right, helped me. Helped me. There wouldn't have been a Brantford Hall if there wasn't the GI Bill.
You mentioned a little bit earlier the saying that the World War II is going to be the war to end all wars.
Yeah.
And of course it didn't turn out that way. But I'm just curious, when the World War II ended, what was your feeling? Did you think, I mean, because you know, obviously there's Korean War, Vietnam.
Yeah.
Was that all kind of come as a little surprise to you, or just, you know, did you really think, wow, this is, you know?
Well, you know, if you can use the word in shock, you know, look at the tremendous effort put forth in World War II to supposedly end all wars. To what avail? Now I'm thinking, first I'm thinking of my son, now I'm thinking of my grandchildren. You know, so there's always something in your mind, someone that you're concerned about, plus other children that age who unfortunately would have to go to war. I hope they would never have to go to war. As I say, how can you predict? We predicted that there wouldn't be another war after World War II. We were steadfast in that opinion, but it didn't develop. Yeah.
So is there some reunions planned, do you know, coming up?
Pardon?
You say you haven't had a chance to make any of the reunions?
No. I may, as I say, I always say I'm going to try to make the next one. I haven't yet. But I have been busy in town. I mean, my philosophy has always been I would rather serve than be served. And I'm active with the Rotary Club. I'm active with Brantford Counseling Center. I ring the bell for the Salvation Army. I serve the senior citizens in Brantford. I work the Brantford Festival selling books. These are things that I want to do because I'm blessed for what I have. And I get my grandkids to help me ring the bell for the Salvation Army. I get my grandkids helping me sell books. I get my grandkids helping me serve dinner to the seniors. So I'm thankful and I just want to give back. I've always felt that way. And that's a good way to be, you know. If you have your health and you can help somebody, don't ever hesitate to do so.
Do you talk to your grandkids about
Oh.
World War II?
We talked, yeah, of course. They see all my pictures. I have all these pictures down in the basement, and I tell them about, you know, my experiences, and they all know about it. They all know about it. But they're too young to understand, you know.
How old are they now?
They're 17, 14, and 10. 17 is beginning to ask more questions.
So they
Yeah.
at least see the things that are happening on TV now.
Yeah. It's been a grand run, I'll tell you. It's been a grand run. There aren't many World War II veterans left. You know that, don't you?
Yeah.
About 1,000 a day are passing away,
Right.
unfortunately. I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the motivations for the project.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the project when you first heard about this? You know, what they're trying to do is capture stories from veterans like yourself. Do you remember?
This is the first time I've actually participated in a discussion about World War II. I don't belong to the VFW. I don't belong to the American Legion for some reason. And I've always been busy building my school. Now I have time to do these things, and I'm going to do these things. Maybe I can say, as a result of being installed as the president of Rotary Club in June, I thought, what is it could I do for the town of Branford High School? And I wrote to the owners of the Branford Hall, and I said, I would be honored if, in fact, I could announce at the installation dinner that the Branford Hall Career Institute scholarship to be presented by the Branford Rotary Club in honor of its founder, Nelson Bernabucci, Rotary President, 2006, 2007. And I wrote asking, would this be a possibility? I said in the letter, if I don't ask, I'm never going to know. But wouldn't you know that they have consented that as of the year 2006, 2007, 2 graduates of Branford High School, program for proprietary school education, will be offered a full $10,000 scholarship. That's great. And I'm going to announce that on the installation of the, so we're giving back to Branford. 2 kids from Branford High School, they will be selected by the scholarship committee of the high school, and they will meet the mandates as set forth in the catalog. But there will be 2 graduates of Branford High who are not programmed for college, but programmed for proprietary school. And after that, if they ascend to college, that would be great. You know, but that's what's going to happen as a result of Branford Hall. And it started right here in Branford. There it is. What else can I tell you?
Sounds like you've got a lot of stuff going on. I hope to have that many things done at some point in my life.
That was great.
That's great. Anything else that you want to go over in the war? Like you said, this is the first time you've had a chance to really talk about it. You've been so busy, so really appreciate you sharing.
I'd like to go over, if I may, those pictures.
Sure.
That one about Bob Hope, yeah. This was when the announcement in the press came forth that Luers had passed away. I wrote to the Register and I said the following: I recently read of the passing of Luers in your newspaper. The article brought me back to March 9th, 1944. On that date, 53 years ago, my Navy Seabee Battalion landed in the jungle of Hollandia, New Guinea. The Army landed several days before and had basically secured the area. Within 1 hour of going ashore, we came upon a group of soldiers. In the center of that group was Ayers administering to 3 Japanese prisoners. They had asked him for rice, but the best thing he could do at the moment was bread and butter. Although labeled a World War II conscientious objector, he did in fact serve as a minister's assistant. And that was Luers. And then Bob Hope. When he passed away, I wrote the year was 1944 during World War II in the jungles of Hollandia, New Guinea. The Bob Hope Show, which included Francis Langford, Jerry Colonna, Dancer Paraditalis, entertained 18,000 Navy and other service personnel at our Navy Seabees amphitheater. I was 18 at the time. Now 60 years later, I still reminisce about that memorable event as if it happened yesterday. Peace be with Bob Hope, in my opinion, one of the world's greatest entertainers. And most recently, Francis Langford. Vocalist Frances Langford recently passed at age 92. She was very popular with all the military personnel, having given of her time, energy, money, and talent to perform during World War II at home and overseas. I clearly remember that in 1944 she was part of the Bob Hope Troupe and performed 2 shows before 18,000 Navy personnel at our naval base in the jungles of Hollandia, New Guinea. May peace be with her. She has not been forgotten. So these are the tributes to the people that were of service to us during World War II. They gave their time, their energy, and I thought the least I could do was, in my little way, recognize the fact that, hey, I did appreciate what it was that you did for us.
Okay, well, I think that's well deserved. And, so again, I appreciate your time. I think it's been great talking with you. You've told us some experiences and shared your thoughts and emotions, and we appreciate that. And I think this is going to be an opportunity for it to be stored for ever in the archives, and people can learn about history.
But so long as someone can learn something from it, it will have been worth the effort.
There's no substitute for talking to people who lived it.
Right, right. Thank you for the opportunity to share my views. Thank you.